Dr. Jackie's here, changing life loving you. Yeah, that's the groove, life loving you. Feel the truth, move, life loving you. It's all we do, come on through, it's just for you.
Welcome back to another powerful episode of Love, Life, and You with Dr. Jacquie. Today, we're bringing you highlights from the inspiring Trauma, Truth, and Triumph panel, where Dr. Jacquie joined forces with Pastor Karen Drum, Dr. Adrian Carter, and Russell Tomlinson, some of the most impactful voices in relationships and personal growth. Together, they explore what it means to face trauma, embrace truth, and rise in triumph, especially when it matters most. This conversation is all about healing, purpose, and the strength to win through life's most challenging moments. Let's dive in.
Panelists to reflect on your present and past relationships and identify one thing that helped you understand your partner's trauma. And upon identifying the trauma, did the discovery give you a better understanding of yourself and your partner? Think about it right now. Reflect on your present and past relationships. Okay? And Dr. Adrian Carter, I want you to identify one thing that helped you understand your partner's trauma.
How's everybody doing? Okay. Identifying traumas. I think watching, as I reflect in the past, how who I'm dating, or at one point when I was married, how they resolve problems, how they address issues when they come up. That's a big sign for me in assessing one's emotional intelligence and their maturity. And so that's been the biggest telling sign for me, because how a person addresses issues is going to let me know how composed they are, how they think, how they problem solve, how they strategize. And when I've seen those types of issues, then it tells me where I need to support, and hopefully the next step is how they respond to my support, right? Further tells me some more information. And then I have to either look at myself to see if my support is the best support based on what I think the support needs to be, or if they just have a problem in managing themselves and how they address issues altogether.
That's a very good answer. Dr. Jacquie.
Yes, ma'am.
The question, reflect on your present and past relationships and identify one thing that's helped you understand your partner's trauma.
I just think any time that you're able to look at history, I heard it said that, unless you know where you've been, you can't understand, how to get to where you're going. And I don't know if I really believe that. But in relationships, I have to say that's very true. If you need to build something that's going to last, you have to know where that partner that you're trying to partner with has been. Because it's everything. It's everything to your ability to empathize. It's everything to your ability to understand. So when I understand history, I can even understand why you show up the way you do at a disagreement. I understand why you have certain sticking points. But more than that, it also loosens my heartstrings so that I can have empathy for that and I can be supportive in the right way. So I think history is really a lot. And knowing simple things like what was it like for you growing up? How did y'all express love in your family? Were y'all huggers or simple stuff like that? We don't even have to know the trauma. Just the simple history is enough to really get you pretty far down the road. And then I think, of course, understanding the history, or even trying to figure out how to get someone to unload their history. Because when we're talking about trauma, I think the biggest thing is sometimes it's buried, sometimes it's forgotten, and sometimes people are still so wounded that they don't want to discuss it because it is a layer of, vulnerability. So even knowing how to get someone to share their past with you, I mean the real past.
That's right.
We're not talking about what you dusted up, edited, and did put the filter on. We're talking about the real past, how you really felt when they did that to you, and what all did they really do, and did you hear them say? Because sometimes you feel like it's an indictment against you. You're so afraid that somebody else can hear the horrible things that somebody did or said to you for fear that it might even embolden them to do the same thing.
Wow, that's such good information. You have to understand the history, and a lot of people aren't even willing to share their history because they want to use that scripture. I'm forgetting them things that's behind me now. Don't be asking me all of that stuff. But then you can't hide it when it's coming out into your relationship. You have to be able to and be willing to speak up and tell the truth about your history. That is good stuff. Karen, Jerome. Hello, girl. So I want to ask you something different. I do. How do you cultivate a culture of truth and authenticity in your marriage?
I think one of the greatest things is honesty and trust. Being authentic is being comfortable with you. And you as a person. I think we struggle with our own self, loving ourselves, that it's even hard to be authentic with those around us because we want to hide so much. I'm going to make an example I already shared with him today. When I got dressed and got ready, I looked in the mirror and I have one, and you probably didn't even see it, did you? Because, you know, we all get those as we get older. It's a pimple. And you have that, and you go, okay, this is me, so I'm going to be authentic in this, and I'm going to let them love me surpass this. And she just said she didn't even notice it because if you're real with yourself, if you love yourself, if you look in that mirror and say, I want the best for me, that's being authentic. Then you can be in relationships, then you can be with your partner, then you can be with others because you're not afraid to be vulnerable. You're not afraid to share, I was abused, to share that in my childhood, I was molested. I've been wounded in this, and I'm still not healed over it. Being really authentic and saying, but it's okay to be real. And open up your mouth and say, I got an issue, but I need you to love me through it and not be afraid that they won't. And if they don't, that's okay because God will send you somebody else that does. And what was the second question on the authentic and what?
It was, you know, just how do you cultivate that culture of truth and authenticity?
Okay,
in your
well,
marriage?
that's it.
Yep, that's
there
it.
you go. Be real with you.
And Bishop, can you describe what triumph looks like and feels like
Sure.
in your
Well,
life and marriage?
First of all, let me thank our gracious host, Dr. Jacquie. My second time being here, and it's always a great experience. So thank you for having me, along with our guest panelists. And you always do a good job in singing and dancing and all of the other things that you do. What does triumph look like? You only know triumph when you come to a place where you understand your trauma. If you never understand that trauma begins at the very beginning that you're born, then you'll never understand triumph. And we're talking about sometimes discerning trauma in our spouses, but the way I work on trauma is that I discern trauma in me. Once I understand that when I came out of the womb, I was traumatized, not consciously, but any time, and any lady, any woman that has children can tell you that when it comes to birth, that's a traumatizing situation. It's trauma on both ends. And so triumph is simply, to me, overcoming every trauma that is faced. The first thing I have to do is be honest with myself, that I was born traumatized. And I think Job said it, man that is born of woman, few days, and a whole lot of trauma. Now, one of the things that I think we also need to recognize is this. When it comes to, and you all are there are many married people here. When it comes to marriage, a lot of times there is what is called trauma bonding. There are people that are married that are bonded in actuality based on the trauma that they've been through. And it's not enough just to talk about it. You have to understand the source of your trauma. Number one, there's something called cellular level trauma. It's not picked up the same way as in the mind, psychologically. Cellular level trauma is a trauma that sits in your cells and it's raw. A lot of folk don't talk about it because they don't know about it. They know what is registered in their mind, but they don't know that cellular level trauma plays a big part in a lot of conflict in relationships. And even though we can go to counseling, we can talk about it, we can discuss it, we can be as honest as we can be. When cellular level trauma comes to the surface, nobody knows where it's coming from. And there is a way to deal with it. So when we talk about the triumph, we have to talk about simply overcoming the trauma that begins even at birth.
Such good information. We live in such a plastic society right now when people are just so shielded and guarded, and they don't want to tell, they don't even want to be honest with themselves. But they want to be in a relationship because there's an expectation on somebody in a relationship to touch those areas that you haven't even shown them before. This is good stuff. This is good. Dr. Jacquie, how would you define trauma, and what are some ways it can show up in a relationship?
So I'll start first by giving a definition. Trauma is a deep woundedness that affects you at such a deep level that it permeates your thoughts, your will, and your emotion. It colors your perspective on how you look at life and relationships. In terms of trauma, the thing about trauma is when it's not dealt with or discussed, what happens is it eventually gets to the point where it demands a way out. So you could have swallowed it, you could have buried it, you could have tried to cover it over, but at some point when it gets full grown, it wants to find expression. And it does not care what it has to do, it's going to find a way out. And this is why trauma becomes very destructive, because it shows up in your relationships and it's like a time bomb. It just blows everything to smithereens because it don't care. It just wants out. It wants to find expression. It wants somebody to know that it was there. And so what we see in our relationships is how it's damaging the very fabric of the relationships because it is maladaptive. In other words, it doesn't have manners, it doesn't fight fair, and it really don't care. And so I would say tips would be, you have to be willing to do the work to, first of all, uncover it, identify, to give it voice, to figure out what is it telling you that it needs to have done. Because just like I say, you know, whoever draws first blood has to atone. Trauma needs atonement. And you have to first identify and then let that trauma tell you what does it need to be made whole. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So remember I was talking earlier about how I needed that acknowledgement and that sorry. And I needed to know that it was understood, that this was what caused the pain, and that the person was understanding that they would take responsibility to not make that happen again. So you have to know, what is it that you need for you to move forward through that trauma? But as I mentioned, trauma is like a scar on the skin. It will leave its mark that it was there. The difference is once you do this work, and it involves a lot of talking, it involves a lot of self-introspection, but once you do the work, you'll always remember the trauma. But the difference is this time when you remember, there's no emotion elicited. It's just that you're basically just recalling. Most of those bad things that were traumatic, you can't just recall without feeling the pain as if you're still in the moment. When it's healed, you will know because you can think about it, you can recall every detail, but that stabbing, agonizing pain in the gut part is no longer going to be present.
Wow.
I will also say this, and this is just a caveat, it's a sidebar, right? Because of the response to last year with my trauma treatment booklet, I mentioned last night that I have created a series. It's like an 8-part series. It has the booklet that has simple instructions on how to walk you through, and it has the corresponding videos that takes you through the trauma treatment. So whether you're doing it by yourself or whether you want to do it with a group that we do together, each one of those different benchmarks along the way, you're going to work through each one, identify, map, and do what you need to do so that you're able to completely eradicate the negative effects of your trauma.
Dr. Adrian, what are some common misconceptions or myths about trauma that can hinder healing and understanding?
Common myths.
Common misconceptions or myths about trauma that can hinder your healing.
I think one of them is thinking you've addressed it when you really haven't. I think that in addition to what Dr. Jacquie said, if you go through that process, I also think there are sometimes round one of going through that healing process. And then there is a round two of going through that healing process. And sometimes, depending on the level of the trauma, it may take you 3 or 4 rounds of going through something to really unpack it, right? I believe I use a particular term that I call the dimensions of truth. And as you grow and we develop, there's a truth that you understood, let's say at dimension 2. You're able to break down the truth and I understand it. And then you give it a few more years and then you are now operating at a dimensional level of 3 or 4. When you come to an understanding of some of the things that you've been through and how you've worked through it at the level of a 7, it's totally different from how you understood it when you understood it at a 3. So I think the common misconception is that once I've dealt with it, quote unquote, I'm done with dealing with it, right? And it may not necessarily be that way. Another way that it also comes back around is sometimes the same process of how we're thinking, those lens that we're seeing life through, we've scrubbed the lens so we think, oh, it's clean, and right? So this is us continuing to go through the process. Well, sometimes it shows up in a different dynamic or in a different space, but it's really the same DNA of what that trauma is or that experience. It may show up in another relationship. It may show up on the job. It may show up in a parental, with your children. And so that's why those different dimensions of truth, of unpacking it, becomes very important, because how you saw it when it was just in the relationship is one way. But when you went to your job and someone said something and you reacted the same way, you may not make the connection because this is on your job, but it's still the same response, right? But because you've changed locations, you think it's a different situation that's going on. So continuing to really just placing yourself in a lifelong learning mode, right? I think is key to seeing how you can continue to unpack. And I do believe you come to a place where the trauma doesn't have that impact, but it's not just going to be round 1 or round 2. You know, you may as well just pretend it's a boxing match and just, you got to go 12 rounds with this thing before you finally knock it all the way out your system. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing.
Man, this is good stuff. Karen?
Hey.
How can couples overcome issues related to intimacy and emotional connection?
I'm going to tell you a story. When I married my husband, he didn't know I'm going to tell this. I love you, baby. I came from a family, as you spoke this morning, I heard you talk about it, that was very intimate. My mom and dad hugged us. We were lovable in the family. We hugged one another. We had that time together. His family did, but it was different. And so he loved different. He didn't love like me. So I loved by come eat me up, sweep me on your arms. You were like, get off of me. And I'm the other, come on. And he's like, I can't breathe. And it's learning the intimacy of your mate, how they love. Because if you learn them and where they came from and the traumas that they faced, then you understand it different and you accept their love being different, and it gives you satisfaction and it gives you peace. Since this time of marriage and we've grown, he's had 2 bleeds on the brain and 2 brain surgeries. It's shifted us. So things changed intimately for several years after brain surgery. It just happened. But through healing, God healed, and that has been changed. And I had to be patient. And so many are not allowing themselves to be patient on their mate to allow that intimacy to rekindle or to be healed. And I think when you realize the intimacy of one another, remember your mate. How do they love to be loved? And try to give that to them. So he realized, I'm one that loves to be touched, so now he will love on me, and I'll squeeze him in the bed. He said, okay, I'm done. And so I give him that time, because it's that intimate time. But I let him be healed as I am healed. The other one I want to talk about real quick is many have been in their past, in their lives, sexually abused. And in that abuse, you carry that into marriage. And someone violated and stepped across a line they shouldn't have. How do you handle that mate because of those struggles? And what you have to do is become compassion and empathize with them, understand them, pray with them. And I know what God can do because I have a man that's got a hole in his brain. And he's perfectly fine and drives. You don't have to be afraid. And because of that, it brings a change in your marriage. And it changes when you allow your mate to be healed from those moments that were hard in their past. The intimacy changes. So I remember he would set up my bath, put my candles up. He'd say, come on in here. I said, what's that music? He said, this is just for you. I said, oh, no, baby, this is for us. He said, no, this is for you. And I accepted that. And I wasn't hurt by it because he was trying to show his love to me. And I think we need to accept our mate's love the way they portray to give it.
That sounds like love languages. You have to understand your mate's love language. Can anybody relate to that? I'm just gonna take a quick. Does anybody relate to that? Quit touching me. I love you though. Here, go on over there. Russell Tomlinson, how does societal and cultural understanding of truth and trauma impact couples' ability to heal together?
That's a good question. Truth and trauma. First of all, we've identified trauma, and our host did a great job of that. But how do you identify truth is the thing that is also needed in order to work through these issues. Truth can be identified by 2 things. Number 1, truth never changes. And if you ever hear truth, it'll change you. That's the first thing. Now, in many cases, we put a lid on truth. And I know that we have some church people here. And when you put a lid on truth, it means that you limit your ability to respond to trauma. You can't properly respond to trauma apart from truth. And so that truth that I'm talking about, number 1, it changes me. Number 2, it brings about a stability because it never changes itself, but it'll change me. It brings me into personal stability. my stability will always impact my spouse. Instability also will have a negative impact on my spouse. So the thing that has to happen is truth has to be identified. But the thing that is most important is this: it's your source of truth. I met a guy coming here on the plane, a businessman from Nigeria. He has this product that's a very, very good product. And what the product does, it's like an inhaler, and what it does, it gives you, it expands your capacity to think quicker and so on and so forth. And he talked about his product, and he talked about the business of it. And I asked him one question. I said, so what if someone gets a hold of your product and they're not thinking in proper terms, or they're not thinking truthfully? So what your product could also do is expand a lie. Until we challenge the way we think, and the only way that our challenge could be, our thinking, I should say, could be challenged, is that we begin to understand the dynamics of what truth really is. So my source of truth, for me personally, of course, is the Word of God, the ultimate truth. If that truth is understood and we don't put a lid on it, we allow truth to expand, then we're on our way to triumph when it comes to the traumas that we face in life. And that's just some basic insight on how we can go about overcoming all kinds of issues when it comes to the traumas that we'll face today, tomorrow, and down the road. You've got to be able to know what truth is.
Boy, this is good stuff, isn't it? Anybody feeling like you're growing to another level of responsibility in your relationship now? Uncover it, y'all. Uncover it. Dr. Adrian Carter, can there be triumph in a relationship if your partner is unable or unwilling to share the truth about past or present trauma that they may or may not have experienced?
Then that goes to how we want to define triumph, right? So I think what tends to happen is, depending on the trauma and what the person is looking for their healing, people are going to pick a spot, quote unquote, that they're most comfortable at. And if I could just get these 1, 2, or 3, 4 things, then they'll say that they're good. I think what's difficult about it, when thinking about the question is, how is each couple going to define what triumph is for them? Because you could have a couple who says, hey, as long as we stay focused on this and on that, then and they work within the relationship to remain composed around that particular vision or mission for their relationship, then it would appear as if they can be successful. I think what happens, though, in the long run is truth will come knocking at your door. And how you respond to, and that goes back to the very first question that I answered, and watching how a person responds to life, responds to issues, is going to indicate how their potential to actually be triumphant in the relationship. I think people like to live with the lie, though. Right?
Come on, church.
I think that's just the reality of it. People rather live with the lie. I think, and when I say that, I'm talking about both partners.
Yeah.
Right? Because the person who's experiencing the trauma has to do the work, and they can become tired, they can become overwhelmed, they can just figure, hey, if it's almost like if I could just get to my desk, my cubicle at work, and just have to do 5 things and go home, then I'm good, right? I think the person who has to also work with the other party through the trauma, that's also work. And how much of that work do they also want to take on to support the other person is also another level of work. So everybody might just be comfortable with it. Hey, you just do those 5 things. I'll do these 5 things, and let's just pretend everything's all right. So that requires a lot of reflection, introspection, and as the pastor said, everybody doesn't necessarily want the truth. Because wanting the truth may mean you may have to go confront your parents about some things that they've done. It may mean that you may need to sever some relationships. It may mean that you can't have sex anymore because the sex ain't, because the sex good, and then that's what you use to hide the problem, right? So now if you address the problem, that's going to shut things down in the bedroom for, 6 months. And then you trying to debate, 6 months, maybe we could get through it, right? Okay, what they say, tell the truth, shame the devil? Okay, all right. So triumph is possible, but it's only possible to the extent that you're willing to allow truth in. And it's going to always come back to this. And I think you'll hear that from every panelist up here. It's going to always come back to our or your, myself included, willingness to do the work.
Yes.
And if you're just not going to be willing to do the work, then the work is going to do you.
The work is going to do you. Dr. Jacquie, how can couples address and overcome trust issues that may arise as a result of trauma?
Well, I think that the first thing we need to do is understand what I call it my trust triangle, right? Those are the main 3 things that I need to have in order to feel that I can trust you. Yeah. And I'm just going to tell this little story. I realized from looking at my trauma, I thought that I was done. I'm thinking I'm teaching y'all about the trauma, you understand? Because I felt like I had done all of my work. And what I realized is that I began to recognize the origin of a part of my personality. Mm-hmm. When I talk about my core self, the things that I value. You know why, for those of you who have heard me, truth is very, very important to me. But what I realize is most people have a very low tolerance for truth. They don't like to hear it, they don't want to see it, and they don't want to be talking to you about it.
That's right.
But I realized that the reason why I have such a need for truth to feel good in relationships is because of a past trauma. So I realized something that traumatic happened to me. It happened to me because my parents took us to visit someone under a lie. They were just going to go visit family, but it was really to drop us off. So when I woke up, Mama and Daddy are gone. And then we were mistreated. We were abused over the duration of that time there. So I don't like hidden things. So now this comes into play if you're in a relationship when you're with someone that's more passive-aggressive. See, a passive-aggressive person is also thoughtful. They're always in their head about what something's going to do if it's said or if it's revealed. So remember my talk last night. A passive-aggressive person and grappling with truth is going to be more of a challenge. So just like faith is not even ground, everybody doesn't start on the same place with faith. If you've been abused, you're down here, ground 0, while other people are here. If you've been oppressed, you're starting down here. So similarly, a passive-aggressive person is they believe in, and I don't want this to be blanketed, please don't think that but I'm just saying the difference. So like they're more concerned about feelings. So they might say to you, do you like the way I look in this? Oh yes, you're fine. That looks great. You've looked at everything and everything's in place. Yes, it's perfect. Then you go out and realize that you got some toilet tissue stuck in the back of your pants or whatever, and you go home and you're upset, or your friend or whoever it was you were talking to. And they have to explain to you that they didn't want you to feel bad. So it doesn't really matter when you understand that I don't really care about why you would have done it. It makes me feel bad because you didn't tell me the truth. So then that means I can't trust you in other things. Are you hearing me? So I think that I go back to talking about this issue of understanding the history. So now that you understand that a lot of bad things happened to me and my siblings because of a lie, now 2 traumas I suffered because of a lie. So I didn't see the connection until just recently, like a year or so ago. Oh my God, that's why I always demand truth. Now see, you might not like talking to me though, because I like the truth. I honor it. I think it's amazing. So does it hurt? Yes, the truth hurts. But it's a little sting, and then boy, it just yields such great things for you. Because the truth makes you come face to face with it and decide now what you gonna do. How you like them apples? So, people say, well, I don't like the way that sounds. Well, then change it. Either way, truth gives you an opportunity, right? So if you don't like the way it sounds, I was talking to a client, and she was telling me, I did this, and then I got this person fired, and I did such and such. And I said, so let me just make sure I got it together. So you said that you did this, and I repeated back exactly what she said. And she said to me, she says, no, that's not right. I said, well, what part did I get wrong? Well, you said that I got that person fired. I said, yeah, that's what you said. You said you got the team together, and they all went and reported this coach, and that the lady lost her job. Yeah, but I don't like the way that sounds. So I told her, I was like, right, that's what happened. So if you don't like it, here's the thing about it. If I don't like the way anything you say about me sounds, I have the power. Remember, you're potent. You're powerful, full of potential, seized and unseen, expressed and unexpressed. You have the ability to change anything that you don't like. Now, I don't know if that even answered the question. I got lost on that part. Reel me back in.
May I add something?
Yes, please, add something.
I love that you said how after doing the work and getting past something, you came back to a point where you were still making connections about where the trauma came from and how it still drives the way that you think, act, and feel. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where I said, it seems like you may have resolved the trauma, but by the time you get to that 8th dimension of truth, it's now beginning to continue to unpack where it came from, what's driving it, how it shows up in other places. So I think that's exactly what I was talking about. I wanted to highlight that so that you see that there is hope and that there is promise, and this is how the work is actually done. You're supposed to do that.
But let me add. So what it also did, though, when I made that connection, I no longer need truth at that level. So it gave me the ability to make room for people that weren't comfortable with truth and not disqualify them in the same making. Do you understand? Before, I needed it. If you didn't give it to me, then I was concerned about you. I'd be looking at you like my granddaughter do with that side eye, right? But once I made the connection, I understood that, oh, is it you or is it me? So then I realized it's me. It's unfair. So listen, this is what I teach in terms of communication. It's wrong for anybody to say that their way of communicating is better than somebody else's. Yeah. It's wrong. Right. Just because I'm a direct communicator, I cannot assume that that's the best way. Mm-hmm. Because you might be passive, you can't assume that your way is the best way. What is the best way is what works for us, and that's meeting in the middle. Mm-hmm. That's meaning that they become more direct, I become less direct, because I have to remember the power of being sorry, the power of being wrong is all about me embracing how you feel and understanding my need for the bigger picture, which gives me the ability to be in relationship with you despite our differences and to make concessions in your favor because I care about you more than my perspective. So when I saw that this was about me, and my need to feel safe, and my need to know all of the variables so I don't get afraid, right? Now I can back off and not my need to feel the truth and know the truth at all times, it diminished. Do I still love the truth? Yeah. Are you gonna still get it from me? Yeah. But now I can make those allowances that I found difficult before.
That's so good. This is so good. And a lot of times we don't know just how to talk to each other on a level that we can feel safe, to be comfortable, because sometimes stress is involved. Anybody got stress and anxiety and all this stuff is involved, and I just don't feel like dealing with all of this stuff. And this is actually sometimes what drives the relationship. So, Russell Tomlinson, I want to ask you this one. What are some effective ways for couples to manage stress and external pressures that may impact their relationship?
Okay. When we talk about stress, there's a biological component to it. And of course, there is this hormone that is released, adrenaline. And anytime you find somebody constantly having to deal with the release of adrenaline, they're always going to be on edge. So when we talk about the stress issue, we're talking about something that is fight or flight, something that makes the heart palpitate, something that causes you to be in anxiety. And all of these things go on a regular basis when you have somebody that's dealing with the issue of stress. Now, everybody has stress at a certain level, but it seems to have a very devastating impact when it comes to relating to people. Because when you keep a high adrenaline level, you respond to everybody based on how you feel. And if your feeling is a whole lot of stress, then most likely you become an irritant to people that are around about you. So the issue is, how do I go about making sure that I don't live with a high adrenaline issue? Well, there's this other hormone, and what it does, it's endorphin. It's almost like a morphine, but what it does is this: it basically keeps you in a place of well-being. At least you feel that way, you think that way. So in order for me to stay in the endorphin area, where my response is based on confidence, my response is based on comfort, my response is based on well-being, my response is based on peace, endorphin comes about a number of ways. I can listen to music, like Darlene. Sex, by the way, is a great endorphin component. And it's something that married couples should do often, because a lot of endorphin is released when you have sex. Dancing also releases this hormone, this endorphin. All of these things helps you to balance out, because stress will come. But here's the thing that I think all of us must be careful of. You cannot relate to people based on simply your feelings. And so there has to be a balance, and even when you're feeling stressed and frustrated, like we all do from time to time, your words have to be tempered, and the way you respond has to be tempered until you can find a place where the endorphin can kick in. You know? Yes. The last thing I would tell you is this. There is a difference between the price of a thing and the value of a thing. Two different things: the price of a thing, the value of a thing. Well, if I value something, there's not a price that you can put on that. On the other hand, if your spouse is valued by you, no amount of money could replace that spouse. That's something that you value. But the other side of value apart from price, is this: it's how you treat it. You're really not valuing a person if the treatment is not there. If you say, oh, I love my spouse, I wouldn't give the, I wouldn't, there's not enough money that I wouldn't give them away for nothing. But if the treatment, the actual relationship and the person being treated in a valuable way, then you have an idea of value, but it's not realistic as far as your experience is concerned. So we have to learn how to basically treat our spouses, because every time I leave the house, every time my wife leaves and we come back with a different experience. And regardless of the frustration that I may find out there and somebody treated me wrong, just had a situation. I went to I get chiropractic care all the time. It's a health protocol. And I had to change chiropractors because this doctor, I won't name his name, he's such a crybaby. He moans, he groans, he complains. And I come to the chiropractor, you put the heat on me, leave me in there for 20 minutes, and don't talk to me.
Yep, that's right.
But this guy cries about his partner, who is also my doctor, but she wasn't there, so he had to cover for me. And then I walked in, I saw him, I said, oh my God, no. And then, where's Doctor? I'm asking for his partner. She broke her arm. I said, well, at that point, I'd already been checking another chiropractor out, and I'm going there. But it's just the way he talks about it. He talks about his care, but the treatment is not there.
Right.
So the main thing is, I would just say, is that you make sure that whatever you value, that you can't pay enough money for it, watch how you treat them, and that will determine how high the price is.
That's good.
My God. Selah. That is good. That is good. Karen, describe a time when your spiritual beliefs helped or did not help when dealing with your partner's trauma. Because we can't Holy Ghost everything, huh? When I tell you, you can't Rosh Hashanah it out.
Yep.
Baby. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're right. I remember a time where we really struggled in learning each other. And being who I am, some of you know me and some of you don't, being in ministry all my life and my parents as well, I turned to God. I went to prayer. God, you changed this. You know you can do this. Like I did this morning prayer. Some of y'all heard me pray, and I was just praying, get off of him. He's demon-possessed, you know. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You can do something different, God. Not one thing changed. Not one thing. Until I finally realized, I gotta fix me. And when I realized, if I fix me, it changes him.
Yes.
Because I change.
Come on.
And I realized at that moment, our problems with friendships, marriage, even relationships, trying to date, we look out at the person, but we never look in. And so, just change me. And through walk of process, he does change me. And it can be hard, because I even had some friendships that went really horrible, that treated me like I almost had felt spiritually raped. And it was horrible. And at that time, I thought, what do I do with this? I trusted them. I believed that they would always keep me covered, and they unveiled me. And it was horrible. And I had to, at that time, went to the Word, and it says to pray for your enemies. And I thought, this is nuts. who's going to pray for anybody that did them wrong, you know? And he said, just bless them. I said, this is stupid, God. Why would I bless somebody that did me wrong, violated me, and you know it? And I finally got down and I said, okay, I just bless them. I bless their kids, I bless their grandkids, I bless their house, I bless their car, I bless everything I could think of. Bless their hair, bless their feet, I bless them, until I really meant it. And after I meant it, I got up off that floor. You don't have to do it on the floor, but that's where I was. And when I got up, I was delivered. So it worked at that time. When it didn't work with us is because I changed me. I want to tell another story. I was trying to show him a way I thought things should go because I could see this direction. But if you'll just do it like this, I'm not doing it. But no, you don't understand. I'm going in the back door because I know I can just let him see what I'm trying to see. He'll hear me. And if you'll just see this, and all of a sudden the Lord spoke to me. And he said, what are you doing being a Jezebel? I shut my mouth. I went to my bedroom and I just began to weep. And I said, I'm sorry. Did I really do that? And it changed me. And I never did it again. Because I am not there to manipulate my partner.
Yes.
I'm not there to make him see what I think. I'm there to assist and to help. Very last story. I was so mad at him. This is another time the word didn't work. I went into the closet and I got his most favorite, sorry honey, I love you. I went and got his most favorite leather coat. And I said, I've had my fill. I'm just telling the truth. I'm being very vulnerable. This is how you should be with your mate, okay? So I took that leather coat. Since brain surgery, he doesn't remember this. Thank you, Jesus. And I took that leather coat and I threw it in the trash. I set it at the street and waited for the trash truck. Here it come. And I felt validated, but I was young and I learned that is not how it works. Right. So I had to change me. And I changed me because he changed me. I had to change. I had to look at things different. And now, of course, it's not like that now, is it, baby? No. So, but we have those times of running to God and think he's going to just do this miraculous miracle because the Bible says, and it doesn't always work like that. Prayer does work and it does change, but it's supposed to change us. So it changes the circumstance. I hope I answered your question.
You did.
Okay.
You did. This is great. I actually am about to come to the audience and let you all get ready to ask your questions and make your comments. But there was one last question that I feel like I have to get Dr. Adrian to answer before we go to the questions, okay? Because we're touching on something we really did not open the floor up, and the reality is divorce happens, you know? Remarriage happens. And so I want to ask Dr. Adrian, what are tips that you can give to divorcees on overcoming the trauma of ending a marriage and stepping into a new place of being open to love again?
Therapy, 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 and therapy, 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 therapy. I think I said it 12 times. I said 12 rounds, right? I got your back up on that. I'm like therapy. You know, I have what I can now say is an amazing story of overcoming, learning, and growing to become open again. First, because I know I'm speaking among spiritual people, my relationship with God changed. When I divorced, I had all these questions about God. How could you do this to me? You lied. You set me up. Shame on you. Matter of fact, God, I don't even really mess with you right now. No, you're real. You worked in my life for my whole life, so I know who you are. But clearly, I don't really insert F word with you. So, I mean, we could keep it real, right? I mean, okay. So, life was going on and going on. And every now and then I'll have these conversations. And one day I decided to get on my knees and pray.
Oh, great.
And I started to pray, and I was, dear God, Heavenly Father. I'm a PK, so trust me, I've been spun that block about 1,000 times, right? But the Spirit spoke to me, and I stopped praying. And for the first time in my life, what opened up to me was that I didn't need to pray, I needed to develop a relationship with God. That was transformational for me. And the relationship was about me being able to jump in my dad's lap. Hey, Dad, how you doing? This is what I'm thinking about. What do you think? This is how I feel. And I'm talking about my Heavenly Father.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right? And that began to transform my relationship. And so it was no more like this rote, Heavenly Father, here's a letter, put the seal on it, hope it gets to God type of deal. And I was able to work through that process. Next, like I said, which was really my first answer, which was therapy, I began to go to therapy and talking through things and unpacking and beginning to pray. And the Lord made a deal with me. The Lord showed me that He was going to rebuild and rebrand me. I said, okay. And I'm going to share something I've never shared publicly before. I was contemplating suicide. This is my first time ever sharing this. So this must really be a safe space. I was contemplating suicide, so I said, I'm going to get my stuff in order. Talk to the insurance company. How long you need to have the insurance for it to not count no more if you commit suicide? I need to know, right? And the Lord showed me something. He said, God's so funny. Because when you kind of get into the relationship status, the communication changes, right? So the communication went like this. He was like, look, how about you hold off a year? And if things are better next year, then, just see what happens. So I said, okay. Next year came, 2 years came, and I said, oh, shoot, I forgot. I forgot. I was supposed to be checking in on something. So I said, oh, it really got better. Year one got better. Year two got better. Year three got better. I said, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. And now, I don't know how I was going to take myself up. I just be praying that, Lord, just don't wake me up. Just, can you just not wake me up, But through therapy, through developing an authentic relationship with God. So, when I say authentic relationship, you don't get to tell me what that relationship looks like. Right? Because it's my authentic relationship with God. He knows where I struggle, where I work well, what I do, and that's us. The third thing was, I really learned to take accountability for myself and my life. Nothing comes into my sphere of my life unless I allow it to. You don't cause me to do anything. When I say I take 100% accountability for myself, 100%. Now, The bad part for you is I'm going to hold you 100% accountable when you come into my space. You come talking to me, we're going to have them truth conversations because I want you to tell me and to be honest and frank with me, and I'm going to do the same. Now, I'm in a new phase of my life where the Lord is teaching me compassion because he's built me up with so much strength, but now he's showing me how to be gentle with the strength, right? So it's been a process. And I'm walking you through this personal testimony to show how it really does go back to you doing the work before you can really say that you're open to others, to allow them into your space, because otherwise you're just allowing them into a space of trauma that you haven't worked out yet. And of course, even in that, it's all being prayerful and whatnot. And the last thing I'll share, because I want to touch on what the pastor said, which I thought was amazing. For a very long time, I struggled with issues of self-worth, self-esteem, right? Because I was violated when I was 9 years old. And that, that kind of lives with you. The Lord blessed me to understand not my worth, but my value. Because your worth can change. That's your price. But when you understand your value, right, that's been transformational for me. So we overcome by way of our testimonies, right? The places and spaces that are assigned for you to go. So if I can't be here if I wasn't here 7, 8, 9 years ago, right? So those things have been very important for me. So it wasn't just about the divorce from my wife at the time in the flesh, in the physical. It was about the divorcing of the unauthenticity of myself. It was about divorcing the areas in my life in which I was living a lie. It was divorcing not showing up how I should. It was divorcing unaccountability. You see, so it still comes back to that individual process for the person. And those are the things that has opened me up to be a lot more open to what my life partner looks like, how I pray for that, and most importantly, how I look for alignment within that space, right? So that I know how to properly place people in their position in my life, which is what we were talking about during lunch, right? So that's been my journey, my process in learning how to be open to date again, to love again, and to grow in the kingdom of God with that person that God has for me.
Right. So but did God send you your mate yet? Are you still single, or what's going on with this now?
I'm still single.
Girl.
Don't do it.
I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you, bro. No, I love the fact that you're so transparent with that, I have to say that I could relate. I was married for 17 years and raised my kids and everything, and then got divorced. And like you, I got real mad at God because I'm like, I'm a single mother. Who wanted to do that? But it was the best thing in my life, and I have to say it was the best thing for him as well.
And I had a good friend who said to me, Adrian, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to realize this is the best thing that has ever happened to you.
It ever happened to you. Because sometimes because you said you're a PK. I was raised in church. What they tell you to do is, it's better to marry than to burn. And hurry up and get married and have some kids. Don't y'all be off doing all of this kissing and then you ain't going to marry him. And then you're getting all shacked up and stuff. Marry him. You get married. And you don't even know who you are.
Right.
And I'm not ashamed to say that I was 40 years old when I really found out who I was. Because for all of those years, I was their mama, their praise and worship leader, their joy pill on the radio, and his wife.
Right.
And I was never Darlene. Oh, but one day, I got to find out who I actually am, and all of my gifts started to wake up in me. And when I tell you I'm a whole nother chick now, oh, honey, yes, sir, God. He had to send me my mate 10 years later. Yeah, I'm old, baby. But anyway, calculate. No, but really, I got married at 50 years old, and the Lord sent me my mate, and then he sent me a man that didn't believe in him. But baby, now, God had killed me to be powerful enough to be the one to bring him into the kingdom. But that's a whole nother story for another day. This is y'all's turn to ask some questions. One question. Come after all of that. One question. Here she is in the back. He said one question because we talk too much. This was incredible. This wasn't recorded, right? It's recorded.
So I didn't get to Dr. Jacquie earlier, but I'm glad God's timing is perfect because it was for this segment. But one thing is, Dr. Jacquie, a question that I've had probably for over 20 years was answered by you and the rabbi, and that was the verse 1 Corinthians 7:14. I could never understand why the man, it was the man in the Bible, and he the head, and it's the man. But then all of a sudden we get to 1 Corinthians 7:14, and he's saved through the saved wife. I was really lost on that verse for a very long time, but I think the rabbi answered that question. Amen? And the other thing is, what happens, or what is your advice? This question is for Dr. Jacquie. When you're in a marriage and you're able to recognize that some of the problems that are within the marriage are from that person's past upbringing, trauma, but they're not able to recognize that. What would be your advice for that?
See, I think it's a great question. So I want to point out what I heard you say. I didn't hear you say that they're not willing to do the work. You're just saying that they didn't recognize that there's a correlation. And sometimes that's why I do what I teach everybody else to do, which is you should have someone that you see. But not only should you have someone that you see, you have to have the right person that you see. So, you tune up your car every year, you get that physical every year. You should tune up your relationship as well. But you have to get the right person. And so what I really do like to see is that couples see someone that is therapeutic. That means that they're not just there listening, saying, how does it make you feel, and just listening to you, but they weigh in to say that really that's an unrealistic thought that you have there. So let's unpack that. Or they're able to say, like, you're wrong. That's really not the right way that you should have dealt with that. Because so many therapists, me and my husband have trouble finding somebody because a lot of people they just clock in, because it is hard work. So in my practice, I limit the number of people that I take because if you're really invested like I am, I'm not doing this for money. You heard? I'm doing it because I want to see people's lives improve. So for me, it's more than a gig. I'm just going to collect some money. As a matter of fact, I was talking to some young lady today who said, Dr. Jacquie, thank you so much for letting me come. I saw you. We're doing so good now. She said after that one visit, I was like, I got to stop giving so much. Because I'm about to start giving packaging a little dose so that y'all can come back for a second and for a third and for a fourth. Because the way that I do it now, I just give you everything I got, and then you go on about your business, but you're healed. So that's all that matters. So what I would say is that you and your husband need to see someone that's able to speak his language and help him to draw the correlations. He needs somebody that's going to probably be, because what it means to me, if you're saying he has not seen it, it means that he's not understanding your language. Sometimes it could also be a defense mechanism. He don't want you telling him nothing. It could also be number 3. He's not ready to deal with that now. So he's still in denial and avoidance. I don't know which of the 3 that it is, but you need someone that's a trained expert that can help that when he starts to manifest, they're able to get him and to redirect that energy so that he understands what's before him and what it is that they're asking him to do. I noticed even with my own husband, because I definitely believe that you should see somebody at least annually. That way, I don't carry over. This is not accounting. We're not going to carry over stuff from column to next year. No, we're going to reconcile it all in that same year and close that year out. So I noticed that we'll be talking about something together, But then as soon as we get with the therapist, it's like he becomes a man of many words. And now he's explaining, using all these, and I'm like, who is this masked man? You know, where did he come from? But that third person, when you get the right person, so I'm saying that to say, don't be afraid if it doesn't work out that well. Don't say, I tried and it didn't work. No, go get another therapist till you find one that fits with you.
Hey, Dr. Jacquie here. I'm your how-to lady. How to do life, how to do love, and how to do you, boo. So click, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more to come.